Hello Facebook world, this is Ronnie Cowan, 4-H agent in Okaloosa County, and we have many exciting educational things that we'll be doing online via YouTube, our 4-H page. Today we have Spring into 4-H. We had some 4-Hers and youth make some gardens out back, vegetable gardens and such, and we have our horticulture agent Shelia here. She's going to talk about parts of the plant and do some fun educational things before we go outside, so I'll turn it over to Shelia.
Hi, Sheila Dunning, Commercial Horticulture. But we've been working with the schools, and some of you got your gardens established before school was shut down. So let's talk about what's happening in that garden before we go out there and see what's going on. We've talked in the past, and those that are just joining us for the first time, I hope you realize that there are many parts of the plant that are edible. And so we need to look at what parts you might be harvesting and what its function is. So here you see the diagram. The roots here at the bottom in the soil, they're responsible for holding the plant upright as well as pulling up all the nutrients and the water that the plant's going to need. But there are some roots that we actually eat. So things like beets and carrots and turnips. Most of those were winter crops, so we don't have a whole lot of those this time of year. But keep that in mind for the fall garden. Then you've got the stem. The purpose of the stem is to support the leaves and store the food. So everything that's being made in the leaves has to come back in that stem and head down into the roots. So that stem is also a very important storage unit. And some of the stems are underground, like the potatoes. And we're going to look at those outside. We've got them established already. Lots and lots of potatoes in several of the classes. But that's not the root you find underground. That's actually the stem that's underground because it is storing the food for it. Attached to that stem, there's your leaves. Plants are unique. They make their own food. That stuff you put on the ground to make them grow and give them nutrients, and we call it food, that's not food. That's fertilizer. Those are minerals and nutrients that plant is going to need in order to complete the photosynthesis process, which is how they make their own food. They're pulling it up through the roots, into that stem, up to those leaves, and then find the chlorophyll that's using sunlight to turn all of those nutrients into a sugar that the plant can use for its own food. That's what makes plants unique. We can't do that. We have to eat our food, but plants can make their own as long as they can find all those nutrients in the soil. So the leaves are very important for that plant. It also expels or pushes out all the excess chemicals that it doesn't need through the underside of the leaf. Well, you probably know this, but plants produce oxygen in that photosynthesis process, and we need that to keep breathing. So we're dependent on them for the oxygen, but when they are making their food and expelling all that oxygen, they are also pulling in the carbon dioxide, the stuff that we breathe out. So it's a really good interchange between you and plants. We get rid of the carbon dioxide, they use it to turn it back into oxygen for us. So the leaves are very important to the plant in order for it to continue to grow. So we want to make sure that those leaves stay healthy. And through this process, that's what we're going to look at is, are they looking the right color? And if not, we may need fertilizer. If they're not looking the right color, we may have to correct that. But also, we do not want them infested with diseases and insects. So we'll be looking underneath those leaves occasionally to see if we have any problems showing up. And then finally, in order to get the fruit, okay, that's the part that a lot of us are eating. It's where the seeds are encompassed within some sort of structure. The plant has to flower. And so you'll see the flowers first, This one's a tomato, and we'll look at those outside. And within that flower, there are both male and female parts. And once they're pollinated, it will set the fruit. So when you're looking at a flower, let me show you what a flower looks like. You will see that that flower starts out protected in a bud, a green casing that we refer to as the sepals. As those sepals fold back, you will have these colorful petals. Now, the whole point in that petal is not just to make it look good for you and I, but it's to give that pollinating insect a target so they know where to land. So when you see those petals, keep in mind it's designed for a certain pollinating insect in order to be able to find the middle of the flower. In the middle of the flower, you will see this long tube. That's the female portion of the plant. That's the pistil. So it'll have a long tube, the surface opening, and then a bottom that's deep inside that flower. Additionally, you will have these thread-like structures that are sticking out from around it. Okay? This is your male portion, referred to as the stamen. You will have the filament, this long stringy portion, and the anther, which contains the pollen. So that pollen, when it is fully developed, and you'll see the yellows, the oranges, the different colors showing up in it, when that's produced and the female pistil opening is actually moistened so that the pollen will be able to go into it, that's what's going to happen for pollination. So we hope during that process that somebody shows up to do that pollination. Realize that most of our fruits and vegetables are pollinated by bees, both native bees and our Western European bees that are introduced and living here now. But that bee will visit that plant, going in and out of that flower, knocking the pollen off of those anthers and into the pistil. So all that pollen will fall down into that pistil. If that happens, the pollen gets enough pollen into the inside of that flower, then it will be fertilized and the petals will start to fall away. So when you have a plant that's been pollinated, the flowers will fall off and you will start to see in its place that a fruit will begin to develop in that spot. Where the bottom of this tube was, the bottom of that pistil, that fruit has developed from that pollinated pollen inside of that ovary. And that's where our fruit will come from. Inside that fruit, that's where the seed will be. So these are just illustrations. Let's look at it live outside and see if we can see what's happening with our plants and some of the flowers that are starting to form. We'll hopefully be able to give you information on the flower parts, but these are the different names that you will want to know. Hone in on the picture at all.